Braden Pagan tapped to the Biletnikoff Award watch list. Now, making an award watch list by itself doesn't mean a whole lot, but this is pretty unique for Utah. I hate to fall into the trap again of does Utah finally have a receiver, because it happens every year, but he has been productive in his last season at Utah State. He knows the offensive coordinator. Morgan Scalley did show some willingness to throw the ball in his lone head coaching appearance last year during the Las Vegas Bowl. Is there reason to believe that Braden Pagan might actually be the player that breaks through at receiver for Utah?
Yeah, this is a good sign. Pretty, a pretty, good indication of what people think of Pagan coming to Utah, and you kind of painted the picture there. Given the fact that he spent the year under McGiven up at Utah State, I think that does a lot for him. We saw the benefit of what that can mean on a football field with Devon Dampier and Ryan Davis both following along with Jason Beck last year to Utah, and just the chemistry that those two players and the understanding of their games and where they can find success. They were able to hit the ground running. And, Utah with McGiven and Pagan coming from up north, there is that same sort of familiarity with one another. The big question mark is, what is that chemistry like between him and Dampier? And by all accounts, and each time we've been able to, talk with players and hear from Morgan Scalley, they've raved about the passing game, and a big part of that is Pagan and his presence and what he means to this team. So, it's interesting. I've actually done, some deep dive homework and looking at some numbers, and he is that true outside wide receiver threat. That is what his game is built upon. At 6'3", 210 pounds, he's got the speed to be a threat vertically. He operates primarily in the intermediate areas of the passing attack, which, those are two elements that Utah just didn't have the type of dynamic, receiver to be a constant threat to those areas of the field. And so, the other part of this is that Dampier, he's got a receiver now, and he's got to improve in both of those phases of his game as well to take advantage of what Pagan brings to the conversation here. But absolutely, I think Pagan is worthy of being on the Biletnikoff Award watch list. And, with the way that has sort of the history behind it for Utah, you look at who have been named to the preseason watch list. The last time a player did that was Darren Carrington in 2017, and he ended up 20 yards short of 1,000 and was really dynamic. Just injuries caught up with him, and he missed some time. Before that, it was Drez Anderson, who unfortunately suffered an injury that season. And then, Travis Latundris on the list as well. So pretty good indication for Utah that when they do have a receiver on the preseason watch list here, it's usually a good indicator that player ends up being at least pretty solid.
Travis Latundris, that's a throwback name I have not heard for a while, for sure. I think one of the biggest stories, and these are linked with the receiver success, is Dampier's evolution as specifically a passer, and you would expect somebody to get better from one year to the next. But I want to know, how much do you think his injury last year held him back specifically as a passer?
Oh, man, I'm sure it limited him quite a bit. When you're dealing with the sports hernia and two of them, that is your midsection, and that is where, outside of your feet, that's where you're generating a lot of torque and a lot of velocity on your throws. So as much as we talk about arm talent, you've got to be solid through your core to be able to push the ball vertically the way that you need to. So, I'm not suggesting that Dampier is suddenly going to be ripping throws with great velocity and on a rope, but that is absolutely something that, he's going to benefit from being fully healthy now. And, it wasn't just the sports hernias. He was dealing with a number of different things that, Utah and Dampier have been able to address fully this off season. And so I'm pretty curious to see what that translates to. Not only has he recovered from his injuries, but he's also dropped 10, 15 pounds, somewhere in there. Whittingham likes to have his quarterbacks with a little bit of cushion on them, I guess. And Dampier's been able to shed that weight. And he's back to the weight that he played at New Mexico when he, led the Lobos in rushing, both in terms of yardage and touchdowns with 19 of them. And given, the change in turnover up front with the offensive line, that's going to be key for him to have that sort of elusive, dynamic athleticism again, because he's going to have to, get out of the pocket and get out of some hairy situations that he didn't have to last year. So there's a lot on Dampier's shoulders, and it's a really big deal that he is fully healthy going into the season.
Of the 22 starting spots, and I'm not saying you got to identify Kelvin Olbot's going to play guard or tackle,
sure.
But how many of the names do you think are solidified of the 22?
Oh, man, that's a great question. Running it up, 5, 10, quick math. Probably it's up there. It's 19,
oh, really?
18, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure they at least have a really good idea. The big question mark are the 9 spots in the trenches, right? You've got 5 on the offensive line that you've got to replace, and you've got 4 on the defensive line. As Morgan Scally said, that there's been no starting job lockdown, and I sort of take that with a grain of salt. You're 3 weeks in, a couple weeks out from Idaho kicking off. These coaches, they have a pretty good idea of who the guys are going to be at this point, and I feel like there are probably only a handful of positions that are still genuinely up for grabs. They've got to kind of figure out some things. There have been guys out of the lineup dealing with bumps and bruises, according to Scally. But I think for the most part, they have a pretty good idea of who the majority of those 22 spots are going to be manned by.
So Stuart Mandel of The Athletic has his Big 12 preseason predictions that are out, and he was on the station earlier today. And he has Utah finishing the season 7-5 overall and 4-5 in the league. And his reasoning, Steve, was it's hard to be a first-year head coach. You don't know what you don't know. And all the players they're replacing on the offensive line. So I'm curious to your take on his take.
It's all fair game at this point, right? As much as, I can talk about, Utah having the foundational pillars that you need to compete at the top of the conference at quarterback and at running back and some of the key pieces on defense that they have, those question marks in the trenches are pretty significant, right? I think them landing at number 21 in the AP top 25 is, the perfect landing spot for them in a lot of ways. I think it's a nod to what the team accomplished last year, getting to 11 wins, bringing back Dampier and again, some of those key pieces, throughout the rest of the roster. But to me, I've always viewed this team with Dampier, with the skilled talent around him now, combined with the schedule that they have to navigate. I've always viewed this team as an 8-win floor. Getting to those 9, 10, and 11-win marks, that's all going to come down to what individuals emerge and step up in certain roles, and how those two position groups, offensive line and defensive line, progress over the course of the season. Fortunately for Utah, with the way that the schedule sets up, you're not playing a really difficult game. Obviously, Arkansas is tough for a lot of reasons, but they're starting over as a program. They're building their foundation. You're not dealing with a difficult conference game, and they're all difficult, but Houston in October, BYU in late October, those are the big games. And so that's where Utah can afford to get through some of these games with what they have, but getting to, those wins in October and November, that's going to be determined by how much progress the offensive line and defensive lines make. So to me, like I said, I view this team as an 8-win team right now, and getting to 9, 10, 11, that's all going to be determined by those groups and individuals stepping up.
All right, hypothetical for you, Steve. And I'm not looking for specific names here by any means, but let's take quarterback and Devon Dampier off the table. If Morgan Scalley, or we can even say Steve Bartle, we're going to go out and pick a star player at one position to insert to this Utes roster that would help them the most this season, what position do you think that would be?
Star player, like from...
I'm not saying like you need to identify Jeremiah Smith or anything like that. I'm just saying you go and
Like
get
that.
a general high-level player, and we're going to drop them on this Utah roster. Where would it be most impactful?
I think what would help Utah the most would be a defensive tackle, an established defensive tackle that can come in. Utah has some young guys in that group where they feel really optimistic about what they can do this season and what they can become over the course of their career. But for Utah to really kind of shore up their, potential and their ability to compete, they're going to need those guys to really step up. So if you could add one star player to this roster, I think you start a defensive tackle, because it would do so much for all the other positions on that unit as well. It's just everything is built, around that defensive tackle spot, not just at Utah, but in that defensive scheme, that 4-2-5 scheme. You need some big bodies to be disruptive, to control the line of scrimmage, and potentially they have that in that room. Again, they feel really good about some of the young guys, Carson Kafusi and Pupu Sepulona. But if you could add somebody that has already established themselves as that guy, I think Utah would love the opportunity to do that.
All right, Steve, this is an unconventional question. I might need Ben's help on
We
this.
are full of unconventional questions on this one.
All right, who's
Hey,
on?
it was Morgan Scalley who said this is the dog days right now, so we're just leaning into it.
We are. Steve,
Yeah,
Bartle me
I
this.
love it. I love it.
All right, Bartle me this. No, who is in the KSL Sports Writers Room? Ben, Chandler, Mitch, Steve, Cole,
Furlong,
Josh,
Sean Walker,
Brian Priest.
You got a big roster.
Okay, if we put all those writers into a room and say only one person makes it out alive, who makes it out alive, and who's the first to fall?
I like my chances.
Okay.
Believe in himself.
I'm somebody, I like to go to the gym.
Okay.
I tend to lift the big weights. Chandler, he's got the reach. He's a bigger, taller, longer guy.
He's also the youngest.
And he's the youngest, so he's got that just young, dumb, willingness to do whatever it takes type attitude, I'm sure. But yeah, putting the group together in my mind, I would feel pretty optimistic about my chances of coming out of that room alive.
Okay, I could buy into that. I know Ben would be the first to fall.
I didn't want to say it. I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, that's kind of a given. I think
I'm on so many different
Making fun of a
antibiotics right
cripple
now.
right
Yeah,
now.
right.
He just had brain surgery.
Yeah, I would. I'm not supposed to lift anything over 10 pounds at the moment, so
but-
you're right.
But here's what I would question about you, Steve. Do you have the what am I thinking here, Ben? Are you mean enough to do it? You know
Well,
what I mean?
okay,
Like
so-
you're going to have to be nasty and mean if you're going to make it out of there alive, right? Are you too nice?
Here's why Chandler won't win, because I truly believe this. You need to have kids. It's the old man strength thing, which I think is real. And plus,
It's
you
a
have
real
to
thing.
have something willing to kill for.
Oh, good point.
You know what
Motivation.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
You got to have a reason to be alive. So I don't know who all has kids, but Bartle, you do. I do.
Yep.
Mitch does.
Uh-huh.
Here's the thing. Mitch is so much taller than people realize.
Mitch is like 7'2".
Mitch is way taller
he-
than people realize.
He's got some size to him, for sure.
Who's his old podcasting partner who's not tall? Yeah,
Yeah.
Matt Biamonte. I always thought they were funny because of the
He
height
came up to
difference.
about Mitch's hip.
Yes. Okay. All right. Good exercise. I'd bet on Steve. Sure.
Well, the fact that Steve goes to the gym gives him a leg up
Yeah.
over 95% of sports writers,
I agree.
myself included.
Yeah. Okay. I'm fine with that. So Ben
Okay.
first out, and Steve
Yeah,
Steve
right.
comes
They
out
pick
alive.
off the sick one right
Yeah,
away.
right. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Good exercise. Steve, thank you for coming on. And seriously, you're killing it covering camp. We appreciate all the great info.
really do.
Oh, man, appreciate that.
Yeah, great content. So keep it up.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. And let's get this little battle royale figured out. Maybe figure out something to put on the line beyond just seeing our kids again. I would, let's actually do this. Maybe charity or something. I don't know. Let's
I
do
like
this.
it. I'm fine. All right, I'll film it. Thank you, Steve. Have a good one.
All right, we'll see you guys.
There you go. The one and only Steve Bartle covers the Utes for KSLSports.com.
Yep.
Mitch is tall.
Mitch is just way taller than people realize.
I love it how we haven't even mentioned Cole as a contender at all.
Oh, Cole. I forgot about Cole.
Because he's the hockey guy. You would
No,
think
and
that-
he's new, and he played hockey and was a fighter. Yeah, sorry, not trying to leave Cole out at all by any means.
No, I wouldn't bet on Cole to win.
Okay.
You think Cole's coming out of that room over Bartle?
Might have a gentle spirit. The truth is, Maddie's going
I
to
think
win.
they all have. I think all of our writers are pretty gentle people.
Oh, Maddie doesn't count. Maddie's the one sending you in there.
I mean, she's the boss. Yeah, right.
She's not writing.
Yeah, that's true.
She's the one locking the door.
Yeah, she's the one locking the door. Exactly.
You know, mama bear stuff, though.
Interesting exercise.
I'm not betting on myself. No, sir.
No, you're not. You don't have that fighting spirit, though.
It's true.
That was my thing with Steve.
I've had a good run.
I don't think Steve has that fighting spirit.
You don't think so?
But does anybody have that fighting spirit in that group of people?
I'm telling you, my money might be on Mitch.
Like, PK has that fighting spirit, and he'd be willing to do anything.
Okay. Fight dirty.
Fight dirty. Yeah, exactly. Throw dirt in their eye right before you make your move. All right. Well, shout out to Steve, who sounds to me like he's optimistic. Sounds like, but anyway, optimistic about the pass game for Utah, which has kind of been a topic on the show today. He said, what did he say? 8 wins. It's
He said
kind
that's
of
the
baseline, and then anything else on top's gravy.
I think that's totally fair.
That's a reasonable take.
I think so, too.
I did think Stewart's was a little low.
Mm-hmm.
Because frankly, I don't think Utah's schedule is hard enough to make them be 7-5.
I agree.
I'd have to go back. We go back and look at it game by game, but I don't know. Is there really 5 losses in there for Utah?
The reason Witt is so fascinating, and the story of Witt is going to be so fascinating at Michigan, is does he still have his fastball? And I thought when Utah, I think it was Cincinnati last year was the game that Utah won that I identified that I still thought Witt had his fastball. I can pull it up quickly. They beat number 17 Cincinnati 45-14, and Sorsby got absolutely destroyed in that game. I thought, Witt still has it. Witt absolutely still has it, and I didn't know if he still had it after the 4-8 season before that. So I suspect he does, but if he doesn't, Morgan Scally may not be trying to climb such a tall mountain that, as tall a mountain as I had thought.
Let's see if we can get Utah to 5 losses.
Okay.
Okay, I've got it. Wait, don't look at it. Okay. I'll throw it at you one by one, and you tell me. Like, we'll be generous on the loss standpoint.
Okay.
Okay. Idaho at home.
Can't lose.
Arkansas at home.
Could lose. Arkansas is supposed to be the worst team in the SEC. Either one of the worst teams in the SEC.
And what did they win? 1 game last year or something like that? But okay, we're being generous with the losses.
If you're asking, that's I'll play
okay.
the game. You can lose to an SEC school.
Utah State
Probably
at home.
You can lose, but I don't think so. I think you're going to win that game.
I wouldn't put it in this. Let's just split it. We'll say 1 loss between Arkansas and Utah State.
Good job.
At Iowa State.
Probably not.
home against Kansas,
Probably not.
at Colorado,
Probably not.
home against Houston,
Yes.
at Cincinnati.
Yes.
You think?
You could.
Cincinnati turned out to suck last year, and now
And they
they're-
had the best quarterback
and
transfer.
now they're
portal
turning
quarterback.
away the team. Well, for the sake of exercise, okay.
You can always lose a road game in college football. Absolutely.
BYU at home,
Yes.
at Arizona.
Yes.
So there's our 5. And then they have at TCU, and then home against West Virginia. So,
You could get
okay,
the 5.
you
yeah,
could get
you
the 5
can get
losses.
the 5. No
Okay.
question.
All right. I just wondered. So, yeah, you could talk yourself into 5. I doubt they lose to Arkansas or Utah State. They could easily lose to BYU and Houston and at Arizona, at TCU and home against West Virginia. Those are all tough. So, yeah, there could be 5 in there, I suppose.
But I would bet it's more likely Utah wins 10 games than only 7.